During the COVID pandemic, it felt very lonely for long periods of time because there was so much censorship then and so much suppression of information. There were doctors being censored, there were scientists being censored, including some of the greatest scientists in the world, like Martin Kulldorff from Harvard and Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford. And most of the political leaders in this country were unwilling to raise their voices about the censorship, the impingement on constitutional rights, and the attacks on public health. And there were 3 attorney generals who were really alone in doing that in this country, and one of them was Jeff Landry. And I got to know him during that period, and we got to work together. But and so we formed not only a bond at that point, but also a deep personal friendship. And I called him a few months ago and said, if you want to do some MAHA legislation down here, let me know, because I want to be there for the bill signing. And graciously, he invited me to down. We have a chronic disease epidemic in this country now, and it's unlike anything that humanity has ever faced. We are literally the sickest nation in the world. During COVID, we had the highest death rate of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And when CDC was asked about this, they said, well, it's not our fault, it's because Americans are so sick, which, by the way, is their fault. They said we have the highest chronic disease burden. The average person, according to the CDC, the average American who died from COVID, had 3.8 chronic diseases. So how did we get this distinction of being the sickest country in the world? And by the way, this before Governor Landry got in here, Louisiana is the 49th state in terms of poor health. And Governor Landry wants to change that, and I'm confident that this bill is going to do just that. Governor Landry and I talked a long time about my uncle and father this morning. And you know, when my uncle was president, I was a 10-year-old boy. We had the healthiest children in the world. About 3% of our children had chronic disease. Today, 60% do. We had in addition, about a 3% obesity rate in our children. Today, it's over 50%. In Japan, where they don't allow processed food in their schools, the level of obesity is still 3%. China, 20 years ago, had 0 diabetes. Today, 51% of their adult population is diabetic or pre-diabetic because they let 20,000 fast food joints sprout up in China, and they began importing U.S. processed food. And when I was a kid, the average pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes during a 40 or 50-year career, juvenile diabetes. Today, 38% of teens are pre-diabetic or diabetic. So 1 out of every 3 people who walk through his office door is now diabetic or pre-diabetic. The cost of this, of mitochondrial disorders, which is diabetes, is part of it, is $1 trillion a year, so it's bigger than our military budget. And we are, and this is unsustainable. The cost of chronic disease, when my uncle was president, was 0. We spent 0 treating chronic disease. Today we spend $1.7 trillion. And that rate is rising 2% greater, faster than the US economy is growing. So this is existential for us in so many ways. When I was a kid, in fact in 1970, the scientists conducted the biggest epidemiological study in history of any country in the world. They looked at every child, 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin, and they were specifically looking for autism. And they knew what autism looked like. And they did follow-up checks. It was an extraordinary study. They found 3 children. So it was the rate of autism at that point was 0.7 per 10,000. Oh, less than 1 per 10,000. A month ago, we released the newest data, which showed that 1 in every 31 American kids has autism. And it's actually probably a lot worse than that because we gather that data state by state, and some states have better collection systems. The best collection system is California, and they're showing 1 in 19 kids has autism, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is unsustainable. And the cost of autism alone, by 2030, according to a recent peer-reviewed study, is going to be $1 trillion a year. And then, 75% of American kids can no longer qualify for military service. This is a national security crisis, too. We have a fertility crisis that's caused by the same etiology. A teenage boy in America today has less of a sperm count than a 65-year-old man. He has half the sperm count, half the testosterone of a 65-year-old man. But what are we doing to our kids? Our children do not suddenly become gluttonous and indolent. We are mass poisoning them. And we're mass poisoning them mainly with processed foods. They're swimming around in a toxic soup today. Most of it, the worst offender, we know this, is coming from toxic foods. And when the good news is that you can cure most diabetes. People lose their diabetes diagnosis if they eat good food. And it not only affects our physical health, it also is affecting our mental health. I did a speech a little earlier this week at the Capitol to all the prison superintendents in the country. And so before I did that, I went and did a little research just on Google. And I immediately found 12 studies of prisons of what happens when you switch out the food that you get in prisons with whole foods, with good food. And the mental illness declines dramatically. There's a doctor up at Harvard called Poland, Dr. Poland, who is curing schizophrenia with changes in diet. These studies of prisons showed that there was an 85% drop in assaults after they switched out the process for the juvenile detention facilities. There was a 75% drop in the use of restraints. There was a 38% drop in violence among all of these prisons. There was in one juvenile detention facility, there was a 100% drop in suicide. So getting good food to our state institutions, to our public schools, is absolutely critical. The poisoning is not just affecting their health, it's affecting everything. It's affecting their mental illness, the depression, the alienation, the suicide rate, the mental illness rates. And Governor Landry often talks about bringing the American dream to Louisiana. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. And that's that they can live a day without pain, without loss of energy, without having to take these expensive medications. And we can do that for our kids. And we have a moral obligation and a patriotic obligation to do that. And these steps today, this is the SNAP waiver that Governor Landry is now filing with my colleague Brooke Rollins at USDA. It is the most sweeping. I've been signing SNAP waivers with governors all over the country. Yesterday I was in Oklahoma with Governor Stitt signing one. And he's getting rid of candy and soda on SNAP waivers. And by the way, we're not in any state. If you want to drink a soda, you ought to be able to do that. And Americans should have a choice about whether to poison themselves or not. I'm not trying to take that away from them. But the federal government should not, taxpayers should not be paying for you to do that, and then paying for the outcomes after you make yourself sick. Paying for treating the taxpayers. And you know, 10% of food stamps are now going to soda. I'm so happy that Governor Landry, with his boldness, his leadership, has been the first governor to add junk food to that, measured by sugar content. That is going to have a dramatic impact on public health among the poorest populations in this state. And we need to be bold. I want to congratulate all the legislators here on supporting this legislation. It is going to change Louisiana. 4 years from now, Louisiana is not going to be 49th anymore. And as Governor McMath, or Senator McMath told me, and said to you, this helps me do my job. Because the food companies are coming in every day and saying, stop the states from doing this. We don't want to have a national product that has a patchwork of different states with different rules. We need national laws, and we're going to do it on our own. So this week, you saw the largest food company remove food dyes. We've had Cargill pledge to do that. We've had Tyson's Food already remove them. And we're seeing this, you know, Steak and Shake and all these other companies, Starbucks, which had just a few of seed oils in some of its, in one of its products, an egg white, is removing those. So we're seeing the companies come to the table. And one of the reasons they're doing that, they can justify it for their shareholders. They want to do it. They've never been able to justify it to their shareholders. And now they can, because they don't want what you're doing here in Louisiana. So I want to thank you all for your support of this bill, for your support of Governor Landry. And he and I share a vision for what this country should look like. It should be a country of healthy kids again. And we're going to make that happen together. Thank you all very much.